addictive part is something you want to be careful of. At the same time, it's also something beautiful, I think. The two biggest things that I identified with most, or at least in the future, that gave me the most direction in life, kind of fell away. Getting better is also something I really enjoy. Feeling like I'm improving on something and just learning new things about myself and about the world. It's just a group of people that shares a lot of my values and interests in life, so I still really enjoy hanging out or being around Frisbee players.
Hello and welcome to Reality's podcast. In this world of so many people living side by side, there's so many different meanings for what is important and why we do what we do. In this podcast, we learn about some of those realities. I'm your host, Mark Fonseca Rendeiro, and today we're talking with renowned International Ultimate Frisbee player and observer of human communication and behavior, my friend Erik Doesburg, about his changing relationship with a unique sport, and beyond that, questions we all ask ourselves about identity, purpose, and how we communicate or pursue those goals. It's a show about much more than Ultimate Frisbee, but it starts there, and it starts right now at my kitchen table in Amsterdam. For the people listening at home, because they're out there, this is me, Mark, right? And we're talking with Erik today. Erik, you've never been on a podcast with me. I don't know if you've been on a podcast before.
Nope.
No?
Never.
All right, well. But you've done your share of the occasional interview, I think.
Yes, for Frisbee-related things.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for people listening, some of you may not be familiar with a topic that's going to come up here. And I think that this topic relates to all kinds of areas in life. But I'm talking about Ultimate Frisbee, the sport, which, like many things in this life, has a lot of layers to it. So even if you're not a sports fan, even if you're not an ultimate player, I think this is for you all the same. And that's part of why I wanted to sit down with you, Erik. So thanks for coming. and I thought I could bribe you with soup and tea. Yeah. But so the reason that I want to do a few of these conversations, starting with you, is so here we have a sport with a lot of people all over the world who play it. You can play it at a lot of different levels. And I'm talking about from the basic beginner, as there must be many out there right now, to a very high level and basically professional at this point. I mean,
yep.
Yeah, you played.
Semi-professional, yes.
But let's start with the sport itself, because I think people can relate to starting something that has their attention, has their interest. Once upon a time, you started with Ultimate Frisbee. What was the reason? What was going on?
So I started in high school. I was in a special program that had more gymnastics or more sports in school and less music and art kind of classes. Yeah. And the teacher was a Frisbee player, and so we first did it in class, and then we had classes or a little team after. We would play after school for an hour. Yeah. And so that's how I kind of got started.
Yeah. So it's an after school activity. So
yeah,
it's got an element of actual competition, competing against others. I mean, and it has a social aspect as well. I don't know if at that time, which were any of these of more importance to you, or?
To me, I just love sports. I was playing soccer and tennis at the time, and I just liked the new thing. So the game, the running around and figuring out how to play a game was the biggest draw for me.
Yeah. So as years start to go on, how does this change, or the relationship with this activity change for you?
Yeah, I think at some point the team in the school disbanded. There was not enough interest anymore, and then I kind of just picked up with random Dutch teams for competition or tournaments for a while. Yeah. And somehow, I don't know exactly how, but I got into playing for UFO.
Mm-hmm. Just a team from Utrecht.
Oh, yeah, right.
We got all those.
Yeah, so I started practicing with that team. And and there was a team going to Europeans that year from UFO. Mm-hmm. And so I got invited to play for them. And so that was kind of like a next step in the team was practicing maybe 2 or 3 times a week and was taking it pretty seriously to, do well at that European championship.
Yeah.
So that made me like more eager to play more and made it like a bigger part of my life.
How old are you at that point? And I ask this because I wonder how much age matters in this whole conversation. So let's introduce it.
So I was 16 when going to Europeans, which is there weren't very many youth players at that time. I think there might have been there were 2 youth teams, like 2 school teams. And I don't know, when I started playing, I was part of the first Dutch under 20 national team, and we were really struggling to get like 10 or 12 people. And it was probably every youth player from Holland.
As far as you remember, was it a matter of, I need to play more? Give me another opportunity? Or what was the priority?
Yeah, it's hard to tell why. Like, this is something I question myself now, but somehow the idea got into my mind to just be the best I could be in that sport. And I would just really, really enjoy it. And I know there were weeks or summers that I would play. I had one summer that I played 12 weekends in a row, I think, and then not have one weekend off and then play like 8 more. So basically every opportunity I could get my hands on to play was grasp it.
So if I think back to, because I got to compare to my life to relate, I guess, but high school, especially in American high school, here you're talking about a Dutch high school. There is some difference there.
I think it's very different.
So our New Jersey style was like a lot of what you see on TV when it comes to the groups, and the competitiveness is almost a compliment. It's the divisions between people, and how maybe because you're an adolescent, maybe it's something to do with the United States, but you need to have a thing. Whatever that thing is, that's going to identify who you are. And it's going to give you a belonging, a place of belonging, right? So my things were music, as an instrumental music player, and actually, in a way, there was TV and radio production. And I would divide my school time and free time as much as possible, to get out of class to go do something. Because in these 2 worlds, I was learning, I was getting good, pretty good anyway. And I could have those were my people, and in the rest of high school, I wasn't safe.
Right.
I was in limbo. I couldn't compete with these other people with their popularity, whatever it was. But in these 2 worlds, in music and in audiovisual production, I was someone. Right. That's what it was for me, was identity. I think a lot of people go through this no matter where you are in the world, even as a teenager, you pick up something, and sometimes it becomes like your number one thing. Right. I mean, it's not the same thing, is it? I don't know. Like, does this ring any bells? Is this?
Yeah, a little bit. I think more for me in early, like as a student, that was the thing I was doing. It was definitely a big part of my identity at that time. For high school, I don't look back at it in the same way. In high school, I feel like less conscious of what I was doing. It's just like, this is fun. I'm doing this. I enjoy running around.
True. But in those, was it 12 or 13 weeks in a row? Like, people get very used to the idea. Like, oh, where's Erik? Well, surely he's at a tournament. They probably don't even call you on a weekend.
Right.
You know where you're going to be.
Right.
That's now a big part of your identity.
I think that happened. Yeah. And I only kind of looking back, I realized how much I kind of gave up by doing that. Like, at the time, I was just, I want to play Frisbee, and so I'm going to just play every weekend. And only now later I realized that I missed a lot of times with friends or family, and especially because there weren't a lot of age, that's not an English word, but people around my age in the Frisbee scene. So I was just spending a lot of time while being like the youngest by like 10 years.
Right.
So I don't know. That, yeah.
You might have missed out on something, you think? Well,
yeah, I don't know.
It's not a regret, is it? I mean...
It's not really a regret, no. Is it a regret?
No, I'm not worried about that. But it's interesting what you say. Like, looking back, you see what you traded. At least you have a little feeling for what you traded. You could never know.
Yes. That's the right way to put it.
But at the same time, in exchange for a lot of your weekends and a lot of your energy and time, there were rewards as well.
Yeah, for sure. So the biggest thing I enjoy was just getting better and getting more skilled at a craft. And I like competition. I like sports. Yeah. So it's just a lot of, I don't know, just moments of doing things that you really like. And then, I don't know, yeah, you can also look at, like, it gives you things like working in a team and communicating with people, and you're kind of forced to develop other parts of your personality, I think. Yeah. Is that what you're kind of...
It is one of my great curiosities. I think that's what I always ask you about, and we talk about. It's the connections between what you were learning on the field.
Right.
And how that helped or did anything to you in your non-on-field life.
Right. Yeah, I think it gave me confidence just having something that I was good at. It kind of forced me to be more outgoing. I remember at some point someone taught me that it was very useful to be a good sideline player. So just helping, when you're a sub, helping the people that are on the field. Mm-hmm. And so in order to do that, you just need to be shouting to people across the field. And so that was something that I was a very quiet kid. So that was kind of very much outside of my comfort zone. Yeah. And that was really something that I decided, like, okay, I want to be a good ultimate player. So I need to develop this part of the game too. So I'll, even though I don't like the feeling of, like, I feel uncomfortable being so loud, this is what I need to do. Okay. So I think that, in a way, translated into the rest of life, maybe, for being a little bit more...
You gotta be louder.
Being more comfortable being loud in a way. More than I would have if I hadn't done that.
And you gotta, on and off the field, sideline or not, but a lot of time reading people, or, reading people, beyond... Well, yes, something to do with what their bodies are doing, but you start to read a situation, read what that person is likely to do,
right? Without
a lot of information, right? With limited information,
right?
I don't know if that translates well to non-Frisbee life. You get off the field and you're like, oh yeah, I see what's going on here. I read a situation.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think, there's probably parts of that too. You're in the field, you're always trying to get cues about what's going to happen. So that maybe becomes more of a second nature, even though that the cues in the rest of life are very different than from a game situation. Just the thing about being aware what cues are there is maybe something you pick up.
We go forward a few years. I find this a very fascinating time in your life. At some point, there's this connection to you playing in the US.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about the practicalities of how that happened, and then I'm curious about the overall impact on your life.
Yeah. So I think the idea started when I was about 16 or 17, when I was very into playing Frisbee. Just in America, the level of play was the highest, so I wanted to go there. In the United States, you have college sports and club sports. And so my first idea was to play college ultimate. So I applied to school in the US, but I didn't get in for 2 years in a row. And so kind of as a backup plan, I just moved back to my parents, saved up money to move to the US and try out for a club team. Yeah. So really it was kind of like a terrifying option, because I had no idea if I would be good enough to make a team. I had some American friends that I had asked, and they were like, yeah, you have a shot. And,
okay. But no one said, absolutely, you're going to be... It was more of a, you have a shot.
Yeah.
You're taking a gamble.
They're trying to give me like confidence, like, you'll probably make it maybe. But I bought a ticket that had I could change the return date. Okay. Like, I wasn't sure at all. Okay. And then it was kind of I got there in 2011, which was and I made the team, which was huge, and I was very happy and proud to have made it. And it was not a good year for the team, because the team won some national championships in the early 2000s or mid 2000s, and we're always a contender at the national level. And then in that year, we didn't make nationals for the first time in over a decade. And I also just got injured just before the important game started. So I don't know. It was one of the best experiences just because it was a dream that I had, and for so long I had all these adversities and I still did it. So it kind of gave me this, like, yeah, I did that. It's good. And just practicing with those guys, and it was amazing. And at the same time, it felt like disappointing, or being injured and not playing, like not making actually to nationals. It was really the big tournament.
It wasn't, everything didn't go completely as well as it could.
Yes.
For what was such a great moment.
So I wouldn't say it was a great year. It was just I don't know. There were big ups and downs, like getting injured or not making nationals. Not making national was the roughest game I ever lost. I think just having the whole history of working, like doing a shitty job. I don't know if I can.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're free.
Okay. Like working a job that I didn't like for, I don't know, like 8 months to make money to go there, and then not making it till the end goal.
Yeah. And at that time, I mean, you're not, okay, people have done this, but you know, you're 17, 18?
No, I'm 22.
Oh, you're 22.
Yeah, this is
still, you've moved your life quite far from where it was.
Yep.
And you're there to do one thing, and one thing very well, you know. How was, in terms of, was it enough in terms of your everyday life? Was it everything you had hoped, or you know? I always wondered, even at that time, how off the field life was.
Yeah, it was kind of hard. I worked some for the company that I worked for to save up money through the internet. But that wasn't nearly enough to kind of keep me occupied. And I kind of underestimated how hard it was to build up a life without having like structure, really. Because there was a structure of Frisbee, but even though we practiced, or I was probably spending like 20 hours a week getting in shape and playing. 20 hours a week is not a lot if you don't know any work.
Right.
So it was kind of a lonely period and boring. Like I was bored a lot. And so that was also added to it wasn't, even though it was like my dream to play there, it wasn't only great to be there.
Yeah.
It had some downsides for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a way that's the other part of life. And here we come back a little bit to Ultimate Frisbee and the sport that is important for a lot of people in this world for different reasons. And there is always that question, and that I definitely want to come to, and why not now, the Life-Frisbee Balance.
Right.
I mean, I guess, especially because the United States is such a magnetic place for this sport. It's not the only place, but it's a big one. And so they dictate a lot of how it can or should work when you're at your best, when you're playing. What am I getting at? Well, so we've got professional sports in the US.
Right.
That are very familiar to everybody. And there you have the professional, so that's their life, right? Life revolves around the sport. But of course, Ultimate Frisbee is not in such a position. Quite, right? It's getting some flavors of that.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of what I imagine baseball in the like olden days was, and maybe the best time, where people had to do jobs.
Right.
Like the day job, and then you get to play at night. Old people talk like wax lyrical, we say, about those days.
It has something very pure, because you don't, like, nobody that plays Frisbee plays for the money, like, because there's no money.
There is no money. Yeah.
So everybody, even though you're competing at the highest level and you spend all this time to be there and be your best, it's all from a love of the game, and also, So there's no outside incentive to be there, which makes it, I really enjoy that kind of pure intention. Yeah,
you can, you recognize that. You can pluck it almost like out of, I don't know, when you play, the difference there. I mean, not having played for a professional football team or something, but but you can feel the difference.
I mean, there's in school, for example, there's a lot of teachers or professors that are there, I think, because for the money or because it's part of, they need to be there to do the research or something, but there's just no passion at all in what they're doing, what they're teaching. And for me, it's very demotivating kind of atmosphere to be around. And in Frisbee in the US, you don't have that. Like if you don't, it's really hard to be like a top athlete in America or a top Frisbee player in the United States. So if you don't really want to do that, then you're not there.
You're not there, right?
So everybody that is there that wants to be there, which is
Yeah. So one of the phenomenons I've been watching now, I'm in a different sort of mode when it comes to Frisbee, right? I'm more of a social Frisbee player. I don't know if there's a more official term for what it is that I do, but it's a big hobby. Right. Yeah. Let's put it that way. For many years, and it's highly social. It's a source of a lot of my friendships over the years. And what's interesting to watch, and again, there are connections here because I can hear them, is how Frisbee has a place in your life and how it changes over time. And in what ways it changes, right? So one of the things that I've been really fascinated by, worried sometimes, but generally just, neutral about the whole thing, is when Frisbee is so loved and so important to someone that it's the number one thing in their lives. And then how does that go, right?
Right, yeah.
And there we can find every kind of story. Right. So for any one story we give here, someone listening may have another version, another direction that it goes. The one that I was always fascinated by were the friends who every single weekend they were at a tournament. And especially we're talking here of adults, late 20s, early 30s. So they had some income that they could use, whatever income they had, actually,
right,
they would use, whether they were fine financially or not. Didn't matter. They were going to find money to go to tournaments. It becomes like, and here I use the word carefully, but addiction, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I never really realized that it was potentially an addiction until I started asking questions about or watching how the rest of life was going. And then I started to learn bits and pieces. Either it was a professional career that was going nowhere, partly due to, the time and the amount of your heart that is in Frisbee, perhaps, but maybe for other reasons. And then there's the relationships, be they family or romantic relationships, and how they don't go for whatever reason. And so it started to occur to me that when it's great, it can be great, right? It can be fulfilling.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a type of fulfillment that comes at perhaps too high of a cost. And there just, I guess last week, I'm sure he's not the only one to ever written an article, but there was someone in Skyd magazine, Taylor. Oh, I didn't bring it.
Oh, the revolver guy that decided not to play even though he was at the peak of his career.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot his name too.
When I saw that case, I thought, oh yeah, that's kind of what I've been wondering about. A player who, and I'll put a link people can read for themselves, but who's considered at the top of his game and certainly one of the better players in the United States, at least, and who decides, you know what, I need to focus on the other parts of my life, and I'm going to. And I'm sorry if anyone, I don't know if he's really apologizing, but I know I'm letting some people down that want me to continue this, but I need to do this.
Right.
And this is sort of that classic question, and what I have to be careful here, because I don't want to, is to try to even preach about what is good and what is bad, but it is kind of fascinating, like where it falls, right? So you've watched this amongst friends for sure, right?
Yeah, I think it's easier to talk about myself in this respect. And I think Ultimate or Frisbee was definitely kind of like an obsession, and I think other parts of my life didn't develop in the way that I wanted them to, just because Ultimate was such a big part.
It had to be.
Yeah, it's such an interesting. I think in athletic circles, it's kind of the whole like being so obsessive about your sport is very much applauded, and I think if you only look within the sport, if you only don't look at your whole life, but only in the sport, then obsession with the sport is the way to go. Like you get better.
You're going to have rewards for that. Yeah.
So it's only if you kind of zoom out and see the rest of your life where you start asking the question, like, is this really what I need?
So a good way to go about this is don't zoom out too much. Stay focused on Frisbee if you want to.
Right, and which is very easy, right? Because your life just becomes, if you play Ultimate every weekend and you practice 2 or 3 times a week, then like you don't have a whole lot of time to see other people that show you different ways of lives in a way.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're constantly like, it's not that the world constantly asks. It's just really what you want to be doing, because everything around you is just going into that same way of life.
Yeah.
And I really like that way of life. It's so. It's very simple. Like just having that one focus is, I don't know. I like the simplicity of it. It's just this one thing that I want to do. Yeah.
For me, like I would try even to relate it to a painter who says, "I'm a painter. I paint."
Yeah.
You know, everything else in life, well, it's secondary because this is the thing that has to come out of me.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So you could be a painter with a disc, essentially.
Yeah, I think that is a good metaphor, or a good.
It's the artist comparison.
It's comparison. Yeah. And I think it in a way that is okay, or like doesn't matter until the other parts of your life become too underdeveloped, or you don't give them enough attention.
Yeah. I think the disappointing part is that you can't have both. It sounds like you can't have both.
I don't know if you can have both. I mean, there are people on the highest teams or the best teams that have good family lives and good professional lives at the same time. I think it's very hard, just because I don't know. So I went back in 2013 and I was interning for a company and playing Frisbee, and I didn't really have like a big social life outside of Frisbee or other responsibilities that I had to do. I was just working or interning and playing Frisbee, and I was like, my schedule was so full. Like I always felt like I could use more hours in the day to just sleep, train, and work, basically. So I'm kind of amazed of how people pull it off, but it is possible.
Afghanistan Balance.
Like, I think sometimes I'm presenting Ultimate Frisbee as unique somehow with this, but probably not, right? This is something in the human condition.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the bad side of it is very, like, the addictive part is something you want to be careful of. At the same time, it's also something, I don't know, something beautiful, I think. Like, it's nice to know what you're waking up for in the morning, right? If we go back to the painter, if all he wants to do is paint, then it makes you happy to paint every day, and that's maybe the beauty of the simple thing as well. It's just like yeah.
So it's interesting that I didn't know about that part about you having gone back and the balance that, well, I'll call it balance that you had that was quite different from the last time, the original time where it was just Frisbee. Now it was, okay, there was work and Frisbee. And by the way, with Frisbee comes a social life also, woven in there. So after that experience, how do your goals change as a human or as a player, either one? What's priority for you nowadays and compared to that?
I went back one more time. So in 2012 was the year before I went back. My goal then was to get a medal at Worlds, And so I kind of started getting into shape and hitting the gym in after Worlds with the Dutch team, like maybe September or October 2012, and just worked out a lot. Like I was probably in the gym 4 or 5 times a week, and it was really. So what I learned in 2011, that my body was just not ready to play to practice that much. Like my body was just not big and strong enough. Mm-hmm. So when I got the chance to go back in 2013, I was like, I'm gonna make sure that that's not the thing that's gonna be in the way. So really, my goal was to get a medal at Worlds, which was in like July or August 2014. So that was really what I worked towards for a long time. And then when that happened, after that tournament, there was really like an emptiness, like I don't know what to do now. Because it's hard for a European to move to the United States with visas, or it's probably possible, but it's not something you can just sign up and do some bureaucratic stuff. It's really...
There's a process. There's a few things that have to happen. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So at that time, that didn't seem like a possibility for me. And playing in the Netherlands wasn't as exciting anymore, just because the level is a little lower. And so, so it was really a long time, or a period of trying to figure out what was going to be the next thing for a while, really.
Yeah. The changes that occur in you, and then there you are coming back to a place, or So now when you look at Frisbee, you have a lot of experience. You have a lot of answers because you've done the research when it comes to not only the game, there's plenty there, but also questions of the game and the balance potentially with life. But so what does that leave you now in terms of goals? And, what is today's Erik's Europeans of 17 or 16-year-olds, Erik, the thing that you are now like, that means a lot to you, or would mean a lot to you if you could get there?
I don't think I have one strong thing that I had when I was 16.
What still interests you about the sport?
I think the people are just amazing. I did an internship in Kuala Lumpur for a while, which was again, like an area where I didn't know anybody, and then through Ultimate, I met so many just interesting people, and it's just a group of people that shares a lot of my values and interests in life. So I still really enjoy hanging out or being around Frisbee players. And it's still not completely settled on what kind of role it will have in my life. Right now, I'm just practicing maybe twice a week. I'm not playing any competition, no leagues or no serious tournaments, really.
Yeah. Is it almost hard to do? Because one of the personality types that you'll run into is the same person who needs it to be at maximum level. If there's any other way to do it, then they don't do it at all, right?
Yeah, I have a little bit of that. So it is kind of challenging. And I think the thing that I really liked about Ultimate is that or trying to be the best I could be, is to have people at practice push you to my absolute maximum ability, and then maybe a little bit more. And I think that just being in that space of completely being engaged, I think that is one of the biggest draws for me to Ultimate. And in Holland, I don't get pushed to that place often.
That's like that's missing something then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm practicing. So I just want to be in shape, and I like seeing the people.
Right.
But like in the period that Ultimate was so important for me, I would never miss practice, and now it's like not that high on my.
It's possible you could miss, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's way more loose. And I think getting better is also something I really enjoy. Just feeling like I'm improving on something and just learning new things about myself and about the world.
Right.
So all of that energy was in Ultimate for a very long time, and now it's just a little bit more broadly or focused on different things.
Which could be amazing. I mean, potentially, right? If you take the kind of, especially for someone who succeeds, who is able to make progress and breakthroughs on the ultimate field, now take that same strategy and plug it into, you name it, in life. It seems to me that there could be some carryover,
Oh, for sure. I think, I really think that Ultimate has taught me more important things than my master's degree that I'm finishing hopefully this summer.
Right. The way you identify yourself. Obviously, although in the teenage years we say, well, you weren't thinking so much about it, which I think is true for most teenagers. But then, years and years later, you can identify yourself as, what I do is I play this particular sport and I play it well, and I'm going to play it even better. We move from there. There's a mix. There's two forces going on here. There's one, the own pressure on yourself. Mm-hmm. How to identify myself. And then there's that other pressure from the outside world that wants to identify you somehow.
Right.
I'm not so interested in that outside world, but it's a factor.
Yeah.
Does that keep you up? I mean, does that worry you? Does that?
Not anymore, but it was definitely a crisis when that identity kind of stopped. Because at the same time, I kind of always had in my back of my mind, I'm studying industrial engineering and management. I'll just get a job somewhere in that field, and I'll, didn't really think about it much, but I kind of had this vague idea that was what I was going to do. And then I had an experience that kind of, I didn't think I was going to be happy in that field, so I didn't want to do that anymore. And then Ultimate also stopped being the thing that I was doing. Mm-hmm. So it was really like a crisis, like not having an identity or not knowing where to go. Right. It was just very hard. I don't know. Just that falling away and not having. I think probably the two biggest thing that I identified with most, or at least in the future, like that gave me the most direction in life, kind of fell away. I was kind of forced to go back and to think about what I wanted to do, and I think this is kind of a cliche, but it's kind of like a journey inwards or
Sure.
Yeah.
Especially after so many years where the journey was definitely outwards.
Right.
I think the interesting thing is also a certain degree of confidence that you can gain. People talk about this as they get older, right? And I think anybody who's hovering around the age of 30 may have noticed this, but I don't know, maybe you're 20 and you notice this over your teen years. I'm heading more towards 40 now, and I do start to have those moments of, this is what people talked about. Some people call it the I don't care what other people think.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And other people call it this certain certainty. You know yourself.
Yeah.
Because you've been around long enough. You've tried enough stuff where you kind of know, you know what you're capable of and perhaps even what you might be capable of.
Yeah.
And maybe disappointingly, and for me anyway, you start to accept your limitations also. That's hard sometimes, I might be resigning too early, it's like, wait, but there's a certain degree of, I'm not going to do that. I'm pretty sure. Right. I'm not good at that, that, but I can see what I might be good at.
I think for me, there's just instances just matter less because it's into it like a bigger, I don't know, just if in scientific terms, it's just one test instead of, and now I have a much bigger experience. So instead of adding one end to an existing end, then this new experience is a big thing that impacts how you think about yourself. And now I have if I have 100 end, then one extra test doesn't matter or can't swing something that much all of a sudden.
At some point, you come upon this question of, you called it the journey inwards, and I want to get a little bit into, can I use the terms nonviolent communication, how people communicate with one another? How does this all connect with your interests and
so in this crisis, I was kind of in a depression, and it was really hard for me to talk about it with anybody. And so not only did I have all these feelings that were hard to deal with, it was also very lonely because I just didn't have the skills myself to tell. Hartlucht, I don't know the English word, to get something on my chest. I couldn't get it on my chest. And a friend of mine kind of had a similar situation where he had something traumatic happen and also didn't really know how to get that off his chest with the people around him. And he got into nonviolent communication. So through him, I kind of learned about that. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah, how you came upon it. Yeah. What interests you about it though? Like, so you're able to, for yourself, you're able to do something that you were having trouble with doing before when it comes to communication. I mean,
yeah, I think my whole life I've been, and still, it's not that this is now a solved puzzle, but I think I've always wanted to connect on a deeper level with the people around me. So this is kind of a tool that helps with that.
Yeah, because there are all kinds of factors, be it cultural, emotional. There are all these factors that keep us at a certain distance from one another, right? I mean, is that part of?
Yeah, I think for me, what was hard was when I would tell people. So I wasn't good at telling people about that I was feeling bad, but once I would make an attempt, then very often people would kind of give me advice about how to deal with that. So I think that's something that's kind of come in the way of connection, because when I was in this bad place, I didn't want anybody to tell me how to get out of it, really. I just wanted to be heard and get it off my chest, really. That's the thing I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I know. And I noticed, I think for a lot of people, it's hard to see a friend suffer or be in pain. And I think the knee-jerk reaction is to focus the attention on something else, because it's painful. Okay, let's not do this painful thing.
Yeah. So yeah. You remind me of a lot of buddies growing up, especially I think guys, at least in my experience. We all mean well. Most of us mean well.
Of course.
But one of the strategies is just that. There's something that's bugging you. We're going to take your mind off it. You know?
Right. Yeah.
Even as I say those words, I feel like I've heard or said them.
Yeah, I probably did the same thing.
Yeah. But so that this is more about getting beyond that.
Yeah, I think I'm learning how to. I think for the last months or half year or year or so, the thing that I'm learning most is to sit with discomfort or or pain or whatever it is. I don't know. I think there's a lot of freedom in staying aware of an experience that might be painful or unpleasant without reacting to it. That kind of dissolves the intensity of painful things. I think that's my... Yeah.
And so, in fact, you take this, not only that which helps you when it comes to nonviolent communication, but you also have an interest now in helping others, if I'm not mistaken. I mean,
yeah. So together with that friend and two other people now, we have a foundation called Ludens, and the purpose of that organization is to create and share tools to connect with the people around you. So another way to say it is nonviolent communication is a very powerful tool, I think, and it's also very hard to learn and to master. And so we're trying to kind of take nuggets or things out of nonviolent communication without having to know everything. You can just use this little thing, and will deepen your relations. So that's the goal of that thing. Yeah.
As you work with people on nonviolent communication, do you actually see the connections to your previous life as a top Frisbee player and I mean, I'm thinking here you're talking about the moment where you had to get better at sideline,
right.
Or do these things come back? Do they?
I think so. So I've run practices or coached teams since 2007, I think, and so I think that experience is now helpful.
Yeah.
I think just the way I approached getting better in Frisbee is useful in getting better at other things.
Yeah, I ask it because sometimes we talk about, I mean, even today we were eating soup and we were talking about a situation in offense and defense where you're, just one-on-one. And as we speak about what is a Frisbee strategy, my mind jumps to what I think are obvious connections to life strategies.
Right,
with how you play a game or how you receive or give or whatever when it comes to someone else in your world, in your life, at least be it temporary on the Frisbee field or otherwise. So I don't know why I always do that. I always see, when we talk, I see the connections.
Yes, I do the same thing. Yeah.
But when I'm on the field, I don't always see these connections. Wow. Well, I wanted to go down this road a little bit. It's been a goal of mine for a little while, because the sport is a big part of my life, and it seems to me will always be, and I think it'll always be part of yours somehow. I hope it will. I think it will be good. But at the same time, I see how it changes. We've gotten to talk a little bit about how it's been changing for you, and I thought, not everything is to share with the world, but some things I think should be talked about because it's good. I think it opens doors, and one of them for me has been this connection. Even if you're not a Frisbee player, although if you are, it's definitely I'm talking to you. But whatever it is, and maybe we come back to the painter out there, or how it progresses with you and that thing that you love, and how you yourself change, because I'm very fascinated by that. I've been recording myself for a disturbing amount of years, and it's odd and somehow educational to hear how even I change. So I'm glad that you took the time to sit with me and try this out.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm curious if we ask others about their journey, what we pick up, what we learn. I don't know.
Yeah.
Should I do this or
For me, it's interesting to get asked all these questions. Because it's an opportunity to kind of reflect, and I don't know. I think that's good to kind of give it a place. And I thought for me it was enjoyable, or maybe not enjoyable, or what, I don't know, like useful. Something was enjoyable and useful.
Well, that's one of my hopes, actually.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting tool actually for getting to know. Not that we're at that point when it comes to real life lack of communication, but you don't always ask someone you've known over a span of a long time, but yet you haven't really sat with enough. So there were all these pieces of your life where I was watching from a browser,
Right.
And there were other times where I was right there on the sideline, just watching. And so all these answers that you don't ever, or questions that you never get to ask. And then it seems like it's too late or something, right? Because we're now talking about other stuff. And so it's fun to get to go back and put it all together.
Yeah.
So thanks for taking the time. And let's see, I can provide a link to Ludens if that's, it'd be a pleasure to do that. And I don't know if I when I listen back to this, if I hear about moments or there's anything I can show people, I'll include. I'm sure we have some old video clips of you playing. We can do that. Okay. Okay. So let's keep it at that for today.
Great. Yep.
Erik, thanks for taking the time. And who knows, we can check back in whatever amount of time from now, year or more, and you can update us and we can talk about what else we figured out about this life and humans and these topics.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you.
Erik Doesburg is a fantastic Ultimate Frisbee player and a researcher at ludens.org. And that about does it for today's podcast. Our music included songs by Scott Gratton and The Eaters, all available via the Free Music Archive, published under a CC license. Erik Doesburg, as I mentioned, is part of the team at ludens.org. Check out their work with Nonviolent Communication, Ludens, LOODENS.org. As for this program, you can find Realities on Facebook, if you're into that. It's right under the normal name, Realities Podcast. On Twitter, we're Realities Cast. We're also on YouTube, if you like subscriptions there. And yes, there are even updates about Realities Podcast on my Instagram. RLTS is published under a CC BY-SA 4.0 license and edited by me. Next week, we're back and we're talking about life as a photojournalist and the changes in Afghanistan over the last few years. I'll be sitting down with my friend, the Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer Masoud Husseini. He will be our guest. Until then, I'm Mark Fonseca Rendeiro. Thanks for listening. Let's see here. I think I got it good now.
Great.
Good level. I'll keep an eye on it. That's my job. One of my jobs.
Okay.
And I'll put away the headphones because it always feels like someone is somewhere else when they have headphones on. I think. Am I overthinking the way people interview each other?
No, I definitely think that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.